The NFPA 1600 and How It is Shaping Emergency Management by Justin Bowie for PAD 4391, Section 1, Summer 2019. NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association. It was founded in 1896, has more than 50,000 members around the world, is tasked with eliminating death, injury, property and economic loss due to fire, electrical, and related hazards, and has developed more than 300 codes and standards for safety internationally. NFPA 1600 origin. Disaster and emergency issues in the early 1990s led the National Fire Protection Association to create these standards and practices to ensure uniformity in response and recovery during disasters. The issues leading to the NFPA 1600 include the 1992 Hurricane Andrew in Florida and the 1993 OKC federal building bombing. These issues led to the NFPA to create a disaster response for mass destruction policy. In 2003, the Department of Homeland Security adopted the NFPA 1600 as their standard for disaster and emergency response. In 2004, the National Commission of Terrorist Acts upon the United States, aka the 9/11 Commission, published a report recommending the adoption of the FAPA 1600 to become the universal standard for emergency preparedness. The NFPA 1600 document sets a uniform set of guidelines and practices for everyone in case of a disaster or emergency, establishing a continuity of operations. It also describes the duties at each level of response, normalizing procedures during disasters, and ensures that multiple agencies responding to a disaster use the same COP to stay on the same page. These practices are applicable to all levels of government, commercial businesses, both not-for-profit and non-governmental organizations, as well as typical citizens. However, the adoption of the NFPA is not mandatory. Even so, the government and most businesses and nonprofits choose to implement these standards to prepare for a disaster or emergency. The NFPA 1600 beyond typical use. Large Fortune 500 companies like Walmart have even implemented the NFPA 1600 to create trainings and practices for its employees to follow in case of a disaster or emergency. This helps businesses mitigate the impact of a disaster on its staff, supply chain, and assists in a faster return to normalcy after a disaster.